Mill Woods.
Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the Liberals are trying to hide what Canadians already know, that it's a carbon tax is a costly scheme that is making everything more expensive. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has already proven that the vast majority of Canadians are worse off economically because of this failed scheme. What we didn't know is that the government actually went out and did their own economic analysis of the carbon tax, but they're refusing to release it. Why the cover-up?
Here. Why? The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite should be careful what he asks for, but I will reiterate for the benefit of this House that 8 out of 10 Canadians are better off today than they were before because
not true.
The price on pollution. And
nope.
As a bonus on this World Environment Day, Mr. Speaker, the environment and climate change, we make our contributions to achieving our targets, and we can do Canada's part, as I know all Canadians want to do, in combating climate change.
Bravo.
The Honourable Member for
more taxes will fix the weather.
All we're asking for is that report to be released so Canadians can see the results, because it's Canadians who are the ones that are paying for this expensive, failed Liberal scheme. So when the government goes through the trouble of putting together a report and doing the analysis, but keeps that report a secret and doesn't even allow the Parliamentary Budget Officer to talk about it, you have to wonder, how bad is it, Mr. Speaker? When will they end the cover-up and release that report?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And unfortunately for the Conservatives, that's just not what the PBO has said. The Parliamentary Budget Officer issued a report about a month and a half ago saying that he accidentally overestimated the economic impact of the carbon price on Canadians, Mr. Speaker. I would like to re-emphasize for Canadians that 8 out of 10 Canadians get more money back through the Canada carbon rebate than they pay in the price on pollution, Mr. Speaker. And as a reminder, the next payment of the Canada carbon rebate will go out on July 15th in the summer. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Dauphin, Swan River, Neepawa.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are hiding the truth from Canadians. The Environment Minister is refusing to release a secret government report that proves the carbon tax is costing Canadians more than they get back. In fact, the Liberals have placed a gag order on their own budget watchdog, blocking him from speaking about this damning report. Canadians already know the carbon tax is a complete scam. So when will this Liberal minister release his secret report and end his carbon tax cover-up?
The Honourable Minister of Rural Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, I'd like to remind the member opposite that thankfully we all passed the Fez last week, and that means in his riding in Manitoba, a family of 4 is going to receive $1,440 with the rural top-up. In my riding in Newfoundland and Labrador, it's $1,430. In Alberta, it's $2,160. Because no matter how you do the math, Mr. Speaker, 8 out of 10 families are better off with the carbon rebate, especially families in rural. They've got that top-up.
Mr. Speaker, who's Randy? The Minister of Employment has a 50% stake in a PPE company embroiled in allegations of fraud. Text messages from the COO reveal that a partner named Randy was involved in one of those shady business deals. The minister assures us it's not him, yet somehow he's unable to identify who the other Randy is amongst a handful of employees. So again, who's Randy?
Here. The Honourable...
Look at that. In unison, they all stand up.
Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, of course, Canada has among the toughest, most stringent ethics and conflict of interest provisions in the world for public office holders. The minister appeared yesterday before committee for 1 hour and answered all of those questions.
They deflected for an hour.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, there is no trace of this other Randy. Global News can't find him. The COO claims there is this other Randy, but conveniently has forgotten his last name. And the minister can't identify him among a handful of employees. This is a farce. Everyone knows who Randy is. Will the minister just stand up and admit it's him?
Here. The Honourable Government House Leader. Order.
Oh, it's getting chaotic in there.
Order. The Honourable Government House Leader.
I'll remind it in French. Canada has one of the strictest ethical and conflict of interest codes in the world for public office holders, and this minister answered for an hour to all of these questions, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
The NDP Liberal minister from Edmonton wants Canadians to think that he's not breaking the law, but he was cashing checks from a company that was lobbying his government, and a company that he owns 50% of was winning government contracts using his name. As a minister, he's not allowed to do either. Now, in a Global News report this week, text messages reveal someone named Randy at his company was part of a $500,000 fraud. The minister said it wasn't him, it was the other Randy. Of course it was. So, who is the other Randy, and what's his last name?
Yeah. Where's Randy?
I just have to make be careful in using the proper names of individuals in the chamber. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Speaker, I, of course, just answered that question.
Is the House Speaker admitting that that's Randy there?
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Well, Speaker, we have the same suspicion as the Speaker does that, in fact, there is perhaps some concern about using the member's name. But, well, the government House Leader wants to hide his member. We're just going to run through a scenario here. What are the chances that the other Randy is just the minister from Edmonton in a rubber nose and a stick-on mustache? I'd say about 100%. Broke the Conflict of Interest Act, broke the Lobbying Act, broke the Criminal Code. We want to know, will the real Randy please
stand up? Holy shit! How are they literally breaking the Criminal Code of Canada and there's no repercussions?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Monsieur le Président, bien sûr que...
Mr. Speaker.
The Conservatives are chanting Randy.
That's enough. House Leader.
Oh, man.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for that.
This is getting good.
The dignity of this place, where we presume all members are honourable. The member in question spent an hour at committee yesterday answering questions from that member and other members. And of course, I know that the member will continue to ask those questions. I will give the same answer. We have a very strict code of conflict of interest and ethics in this country, and all ministers are expected to comply with that.
Mr. Speaker, the AG's report proves again this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or corruption. The report reveals massive corruption at the Green Slush Fund, highlighting the misappropriation of $76 million through 90 cases of conflict of interest. Their directors sat at a table, awarded millions of dollars to their friends and to their own business interests, all the while more and more Canadians are hungry and homeless. Right. The question is simple. What plan does the minister have to get that money back?
The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are so allergic to good news that they go to old news, Mr. Speaker. The big news today is 4.75. That's the number that all Canadians will remember. That is the number because we have good economic news. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to answer the same question again. What is a responsible government? It's about lynching and inquiry. That's what we did, Mr. Speaker. And on the basis of the findings, Mr. Speaker, we suspended the funding to the organization. The CEO and the chair resigned, Mr. Speaker. And now we're proposing a new governance model, one with the National Research Council, because we want to restore funding to small and medium-sized businesses in this country, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Pontiac. Mr. Speaker, water is essential for Indigenous communities. It's life. It's sacred. Before 2015, the Conservative government refused to listen to First Nations. At the time, there were 105 long-term drinking water advisories. Can the Minister for Indigenous Services update us on the government's efforts to protect water and invest in infrastructure for our Indigenous communities? The Honourable Minister. thank you to the member for Pontiac for her work on access to drinking water. In 2015, the Liberal government completely changed the paternalistic approach of Stephen Harper. We now listen to and work closely with Indigenous leaders. Our investment has allowed us to eliminate 144 drinking water advisories. We've also tabled a clean water bill for First Nations so that we'll never go back to where we were before. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
The Auditor General's report proves that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost and the corruption. Most of the government's $200 million in contracts with their friends at McKinsey broke the rules. Liberals are tight with McKinsey. The former ambassador to China and head of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Panel came from McKinsey. The policy director to the former Minister of Public Services and Procurement was also McKinsey. This government serves McKinsey consultants and scandalizes Canadians. Why did Liberals repeatedly break the rules to benefit their friends at McKinsey?
The Honourable Minister
to get rich, man.
Service and Procurement.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. J'ai déjà répondu.
Thank you, Minister.
That's the wrong bald guy. We want Randy.
Also,
where's Randy?
To this question. One question we haven't got an answer to is why are the Conservatives not sharing today's great economic news?
That's all they have to say.
Interest rates in the past 4 years, and the first in G7 countries. And that is not only because we have been responsible budgetarily, but because Canada in 2025, inaudible for the interpreter, investments in dental care, investments in healthcare and childcare, especially throughout Canada, and investments in home building.
For Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, it's no surprise that Liberal minister will do everything to avoid talking about even mentioning McKinsey in the response. Minister, this question is about McKinsey. This company supercharged the opioid crisis, advised totalitarian regimes, held a corporate retreat down the road from a concentration camp. This company has a vile track record, and yet Liberals constantly turn to this company, supercharging McKinsey's profits, and Liberals have turned to McKinsey to make critical decisions about this country's future. Now that they've finally been caught by the Auditor General, will this NDP Liberal government finally ban this vile company from government contracts? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Public Service and Procurement.
It may indeed be that our colleague was distracted when I spoke about the matter many times during the question period. I'm happy to repeat the same answer to the same question, which is the fact that we thank the Auditor General for her report. Her report contains recommendations and views that have been understood and heard in many other reports in the previous months. We have acted on those recommendations for more than a year now. There's nothing more to add except that today is an important day for Canadians and their economy.
They don't seem to care.
Now, the first time in 4 years that there is a fall in the interest rate and the first decrease across all 47 countries.